You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Levi Tesla, here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota with Mailbox Money. And today I'm joined by John Clapper, who said he's in the middle of nowhere, Mobridge in South Dakota here. And John's going to talk to us about his various ventures in the technology world. His main gig right now is working for Verdia as the vice president of technologies. So, John, thanks for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So,
Yes, sir. Well, John, why don't you start with kind of your background, how you got into technology, and then we'll get into the things that you're doing today.
yeah, so I got into technology, kind of fell into it in the data and analytics space. So before I dropped there, I was always the technical guy in the room. So I started as the youth and family pastor, just what I enjoyed doing. Worked through that for a few years, went back to college to finish my degree. During that time, figured out that I didn't want to get paid for ministry and I wanted to do it for free. And so I had to figure out what I was good at. So throughout that journey, I think I've done almost everything under the sun. I worked with a group home for boys. I worked selling cars. I worked in a warehouse for Home Depot. I was going to go back to college to become a pharmacist, and that changed dramatically when I moved to be a call center rep for a company called LifeLock. So the guy who used to put his social security number on buses and park benches. I went there and worked there for about 9 months in the call center and went into resource planning, and got promoted into more of the tech role there. My job was basically just copying from a reporting system into Excel and then doing all the transformation and sending out reports and a few different things. But um, I figured that, like, if I'm spending half of my day copying and pasting, like, that was a huge waste of time. And so I figured out the reporting system. It was called Business Objects. It's an old reporting system. And I was like, this could do everything that Excel is doing. We just need to change a couple of things. So from there, I figured I went and talked to the director of business intelligence and said, hey, I want to use this tool. I just need help understanding it and fix a couple of things that I figured out that was broken and why we were moving it to Excel. He had a big like relief, a sigh on his face, and he was like, "I've been waiting for somebody to come and tell me how to do, or tell me what we needed to do to be able to have people use it." And so that was kind of the introduction to data and analytics, which is where I spent a lot of my time for the next, I want to say next, 5, 10 years, going to various companies. I joined a consulting company for a little bit, then got hired on full time where I was consulting, which was Mobile Mini at the time. Now it's Will Scott, since they had merged and acquired Mobile Mini. But I worked there as anything related to BI, business intelligence, and data and analytics. I hung out there, learned a ton. Went to another consulting company because I wanted to expand my reach. That's when really my leadership journey started. I joke with a buddy all the time. I was like, I never want to be in leadership. I didn't want to be in leadership because I didn't want the responsibility and the stress, but I always found myself having the responsibility and stress and not getting paid for it. So I said, you know
You might
what?
as well jump into it.
Yeah, might as well jump into it. And found out that I just really enjoy it and really love it the more I got into it. And so from there, I worked with companies like T-Mobile, Microsoft, and K2, which is now Elevate. Did a lot of data and analytics work for them, led a bunch of data and analytics team, and then learned, because data and analytics is getting more software driven and AI is coming into the face. Learn Python, learned more about the software engineering side of things. Spoken at a few conferences, so SAP, at a few SAP conferences, and just really enjoyed technology, and as I've learned as a leader, you kind of have to know a lot about everything, and then be able to trust your teams to be able to get stuff done. So through that, became, within about 9 months, became manager of the data and analytics department, then became director, and then an opportunity came about to actually go full time at a company, which I really enjoy. And so I use being a consultant to learn. And then I like going into full time positions and actually helping a company transform. And so an opportunity arised to be able to go into into kind of chaos and kind of manage it and move it to the next level. So I really don't like doing the same thing every day. I like problems. I like solving them. I like working with people. And so it was just a great opportunity to jump in as the VP of technology to be able to help transform, kind of a mess and chaos um, into helping credit unions have a core. I don't know if you know what a core is, but basically the core of like financial institutions like um, banks and credit unions is what the base of all their transactions and everything goes through. So when you open up your mobile app, it's really connecting to the core to be able to process those transactions, loans, whatever. And so at the end of the day, we saw that there was a gap in technology when it comes to financial. Like they're stuck back in, the 2000s, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, if you looked at some of the screens, it's like going back to, close to DOS days, um, or Windows 3.1, if you're old enough to
There we go.
remember
That
that.
connects with me a little more.
Yep.
Some of those terms went, I think, over my head and up, but I think everyone can relate to, yeah, early
Yeah.
Windows days.
So during the old school Windows days, and so there hasn't been a lot of progress within that space. And so the CEO is who I worked for before or worked with before, and he brought in kind of a crack team to come in and help move this core because it was agile enough and small enough to where we could come in and make a lot of good changes in that industry from a credit union perspective and be able to help them grow and be able to go with the banks. And so utilizing AI, which I know is a big buzzword these days, but utilizing AI and utilizing new technologies like the cloud, which isn't too new, but it's new to that space to be able to make it more useful and helpful for credit unions to
So
take care of their
let me ask you,
members.
the credit unions that Verdia is working with, are they mostly like, since you're here in South Dakota, are they the more rural or is it nationwide, or break that down for me?
They're more rural, but more out of Ohio and Iowa and northern Minnesota. And so
Okay.
we do have one that is actually close to you, near Wagner. Um, if I'm getting my geography correctly. But it's more towards South Dakota or more towards Sioux Falls,
Yep.
on the
Yep.
eastern side. So more southeast. But at the end of the day, we're helping a lot of rurals. We're hoping to get to be national. I mean, that's part of the plan, but we still want to be able to give the tools to the smaller credit unions to be able to do the things that bigger credit unions are able to pay for as well. So
Okay. Well, how does that process work then? Are you guys doing reach out to them, or are they coming to you guys, or is there a blend of both of that, or is that might not even be where you're operating in? So,
there's a
it,
blend of that, right? So essentially, a lot of times credit unions will hire what's called a consultant to come in and to do
okay,
core searches. So we work with them. We have had some people reach out to us on LinkedIn because since we did the rebranding, it used to be called CU Interface, but now it's Verdia. Since we did the rebranding and stuff, we've been a lot more active on LinkedIn and different platforms. So it's a good mixture of both. The process for actually like getting a core integrated is actually a long process, a sales process. So what we've done is we have we have add-ons that can be used on any core. And so since a lot of us came from the data and analytics space, like and the AI space, being able to create tools that could connect to any core actually gets us in the door and is uh, a quicker process to be able to still help credit unions without having to force them to join our core. But the hope is as we work with them, they see the technology that we're working with and how we're kind of changing the space. So that way they're able to come in and say, okay, we're looking for a new core. Like let's look at yours. Is the kind of that plan to kind of land and expand within a credit union versus just coming in and saying, hey, let's redo your core.
Okay, gotcha. Well, John, I'd like to actually kind of switch up and maybe get a little more personal with you. You hit on the subjects of doing ministries and all those various other things. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more and how your journey into finding what you wanted to do for other listeners that maybe aren't quite sure what path they want to choose?
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned early on, as I was going through kind of the transition of being a pastor and getting paid for it versus wanting to do that for free was the idea of reverse engineering your life and looking at like 5 years down the road, what do I want my life to look like? And then going back and the idea of reverse engineering is taking a product that's already built and then going back and figuring out how it was actually built and walk through the steps of rebuilding it. And so I sat down with my wife. I think this was it was just the 2010 crash. Um
Right after, yeah.
and that's when I decided I didn't want to be paid to be a pastor, which was a great chance to do that. Um, but we sat down and I think it was a pastor, Mark Driscoll. He's a little controversial at this point, but it doesn't mean that this process is bad. But we heard about it, so we sat down and I was like, hey, I want to be at, a certain salary. We want to own our house. We want certain things that are happening. And the way that I had reverse engineer it was to be a pharmacist. I was like, well, I'll go back to pharmacy. We ended up moving in with my parents, which wasn't a fun, it's never fun to move back in with your parents when you have a kid and a kid on the way. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do to make it through. And so through that, it was like we wanted to move towards that direction. And my life looks completely different at that 5 year mark, like from a career perspective, but from where we wanted to hit from a salary perspective, from owning a house, wanting to make sure that we had the freedom to be able to do ministry and to walk through, we hit all those marks. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of things is just being adaptable and trying a bunch of things. I mean, from a helpful, what I tell my kids is like in your 20s, try everything because you don't know what you like until you do it, right? In your 30s, figure out what you're good at. In your 40s, make money at it, and in your 50s, enjoy doing the whatever you want to for the rest of your life as you're walking through stuff. So is kind of the and so personally, that's kind of what I did without even trying is in my 20s and early in my 20s, I did a lot of different things. Ministry, like I said, where um I worked at a group like a program for mentally delayed people. I I worked at various retail shops. I unloaded trucks. I did a lot of different things
Yeah. Yeah.
that brought me to what I enjoyed. And who would have thunk like as I was trying to go back to school to be a pharmacist, I would land at a call center that allowed us to move out of my parents' house and to work through that. And that led to falling into technology. And you talk to a lot of people who are in the technology field, it's not necessarily what they went out to do, right? At the
Yeah.
beginning, they kind of fell into it based on they were just good at it. And my skills were I was really good at diving deep in the technical, but because of that pastoral background and sales background, I'm very able to talk to people and work through and be that translator between, the guys who don't like people and they don't speak the same language. like you learn how to translate that and you're a people person, it's really easy to become quote unquote a unicorn in the business because at the end of the day, I always say my superpower is being mediocre quickly at stuff.
Hey,
So um and so that's always been super helpful. But a lot of it was like when I first was a pastor, we moved out here to Mobridge in about 2007, 2006. I want to say 2005, 2006, if I'm correct. And we helped out with the church that we're at today. Um, but we always loved South Dakota. We always talked about moving back, but I don't farm, I don't ranch, I don't do construction. I didn't
Mobridge is kind of a hard spot to live at.
yeah. Um, and so when 2020 hit and everyone went remote, like it was a perfect opportunity and we man, it was during COVID. Me and my wife had COVID. Really weird story, but bear with me on this one. Two to 3 weeks before, I was having random dreams, like the same consistent dream about going back to Mobridge. And I had no idea why. I didn't know, I'm not saying it's anything other than it could have been just a coincidence, but I was dreaming about it. And
Yeah.
I was on a walk with my wife and I hadn't told her anything about this. We were on a walk and she's like, I've been thinking about moving back to Mobridge. What are your thoughts? And I was and that was February, like early February. Um, we went to our works and they're like, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. I gave up an opportunity to be the director of my department because we were going through a transition. And they're like, well, if you stay, you could be a director. And I was like, I don't want to stay. I'm okay with that. So we moved out here. Um, we moved out here and within I think it was May of 2021. And so it was very or no, it would have been May of 2020. It was very quick from where it happened. Maybe
Okay.
it was February of 2021. I apologize. But
It's okay.
it was a very quick turnaround. Like within 4 months we had sold our house, bought a house out here, and we were out here because I love being centrally located in the middle of nowhere. A shout out to WRT because it's one of the best internet places, internets that I've ever had. Um,
Nice.
and uh, and so
Important for remote working.
yeah, perfect for remote working. And it's just we had been in Phoenix for about 10 years. We had lived in Portland for a bit and in California for a bit. So my kids have experienced kind of the city life. I wanted them to understand that there are different cultures out there within that's going, and I actually enjoy the slower pace. And the only thing that's bad about living out here is traveling. So when I have to travel to different places, I have to drive 2 hours to the airport, but
And then,
that's okay. Like I'd give it up in a heartbeat. So
well, John, besides that, Verdia, you were mentioning to me that you're kind of in another venture. Would you mind sharing a little bit or what you can on that?
yeah, so it's a business that I started with two other guys. And it's basically AI consulting, or technology consulting, to be honest. We've been helping with different projects from implementing, NetSuite, which isn't our bread and butter and isn't what we enjoy doing, but it's definitely something that is helpful. And then working with people to help bring AI into their organization. I think there was an NPR show that talked about how 80% of projects fail to do AI projects fail to do ROI. And a lot of that reason is because they hit what we call kind of the last mile, the chatbot, right?
Yeah.
Um, Chatbot thing for AI, which is great. It's a great parlor trick, being able to ask something and get something back, but it's not what drives value within a business. And so we kind of put on our hats and look through. It's like how can we use AI in a utilitarian mindset? So being able to go in and drive that value by looking at, okay, you have a bunch of messed up data because data is kind of the new oil and is really the foundation of what AI is. And so how can you actually use AI to clean up your data and get into a structure that is helpful and useful? And then those chatbots become a lot more valuable to you because you have clean and good data, walking through how do you take and deal with the tediousness of these tasks, like what I was doing, copy and pasting into Excel and the different processes from that point on, and go through. And we actually have this infused into Verdia as well. It's like, how do we instead of you having to go hire 10 data scientists and some data engineers to clean up your data and stuff, how can you get by with like one or two, right?
Yeah.
And that way people are focused more on the value adds to their jobs versus the tediousness of dealing with data and working through how do you get answers more, quicker your to your members, to your customers, or to the people who are making the decisions to move forward. And so we have tools that go throughout that gamut of the data process, and how you cleanse it, how you analyze it to be able to help, you know, companies that can't afford to hire those data engineers and data scientists to actually get a similar answer as quickly as if they are actually quicker because you don't have people arguing over what you should be doing, to be able to get those answers quicker, to be able to drive value for your company and for your members.
I don't believe I heard is there a company name?
Yeah, it's called Sindachi.
Dachi. Okay.
Yep.
So for those listening that would like to maybe learn more about it and get the services of either company, Sadachi or Verdia, where would you send them to?
I honestly would send them for Verdia. We have a website, verdia.com. Sindachi, you just want to reach out to myself or Garrett Petria or Petri. I always mess up his name. But
Is
on
best place
LinkedIn, just
LinkedIn
reach
for
out to
them?
me and I can get you to the right place for Sindachi. We don't have a website. We've been mostly word of mouth going through just because it is more of a side project, but we've been working with we've about 7 companies that we're working with at this point,
It's
and
great.
we're happy to grow that as it grows because um we really just want to be able to help businesses drive value, and Verdio is specific to credit unions and core and technology, where this one we can work with any company that's out there that would like help.
Is LinkedIn the best place for people to reach out to you?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, John, I appreciate your time today, sir, and sharing your journey and path and all the technology insights that you shared. I really appreciate it. I think our listeners will get some good value out of it.
So, and if it's okay, I don't know if we're at time, but I'd like to talk a little bit about like trying, like, our hope in part of this is to be able to start bringing technology to rural areas. And this is something we didn't talk about as we're walking through it, but one thing that we're working on is this idea of we call it a pod, essentially, to where we have like one senior engineer working with 3 junior engineers who are just coming out of high school, just coming out of college, trying to be able to help people stay in rural areas because it's so hard to, a lot of the newer generations are wanting to get into technical jobs, but if you want to get into it, a lot of times you have to move away to kind of bigger cities to be able to build that up and walk through. And also with the big push from a lot of the bigger tech companies to go back into the office, we're trying to work through because we've found, I mean, I just met one of my senior director for the first time, that I've worked with for the last 3 4 years, last week, right?
Oh, wow.
So and we've been able to work really well remotely. So the goal of that essentially would be to start working through with clients on both sides, right? Verdia or Sendachi, to be able to build up, our technology in rural areas because we know that that's kind of been skipped, right? And there's a lot of smart people who either have to move away to get to there, or they can't stay where they may want to stay. They may want to stay in Mobridge or some of these more rural areas, but they're not able to because obviously the jobs are, into kind of the bigger cities like Phoenix and Portland and Seattle and San Francisco and Bay Area. Yep.
That's a great mission to have, and obviously one that rings close to home being here in the Midwest. So I think that is a great mission, and I wish you guys all the best success in that. Awesome. Well, thanks, John, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.